Hello, and welcome to the Right Perspective Podcast, Interview Edition. I'm your host, Benjamin Davis, and I'm here with the Layman Apologist today. How you doing, Layman?
I'm doing very well, brother. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on, talking to us about the Muslim invasion of the West. So,
Yes.
first, before we get into that, who are you? Who are people listening to today?
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you very much for having me. I go online by the Layman Apologist. Now, I am a lay apologist. I have been doing this for this last 15 years. I have been studying apologetics throughout that 15 years, and the primary two religions that I study upon are Islam and Mormonism. We're looking forward to getting into some good stuff today, my friend. I thank you very much for having me on, but for your audience that don't know me, that's pretty much what the Layman Apologist is all about. I exist in a way to show the everyday person in the pew that they are capable of doing apologetics. So my name is the Layman Apologist. That is the name that I go by online. I am a lay apologist. I've pretty much been self-trained under the care of different pastors throughout the years. I primarily study different religions, but primarily Islam and Mormonism. Those are the two areas that I focus most on. Apart from that, I try and make different content, whether it's on YouTube or my own podcast, just for your average everyday Christian, to show them that just as much as I'm called the layman apologist, that they too, the everyday person in the pew, is capable of studying apologetics, should study apologetics, and that they are far more capable than they give themselves credit for.
Yeah, very good. I appreciate your shorts that come across on YouTube. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I haven't done as many shorts in this last while because I've been pretty busy with a few other ventures, like you and I were talking about off camera. But very excited to do a lot more in the future, my friend. So can't wait for that to happen. But also, more importantly, I can't wait to have you and Cooper on my channel, vice versa. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, looking forward to that. We got to find a time to do that where all three of us are available.
Yeah, that's the main thing, trying to get times worked out, especially with the time difference over here.
Right. Was it a 6-hour difference, I think? 5:30?
Yeah, yeah, that's my bad as well. I forgot to actually mention this to your audience. I actually live in Northern Ireland, so you've got a little bit of an Irishman with you here today, but yeah, it is currently about 5:45 for me, so decent little time difference, but not too bad.
Nice. Okay. So, I called it an invasion. I want you to answer, why are we thinking of it, Muslims coming in, immigrating into our lands? Why are we thinking of that as a threat, as an invasion?
Yeah. Well, this is where things get very, not controversial on my end, because I have zero issue saying this, but this is where I think a lot of people get very up in arms, because whenever we use the term invasion, or, we look at it and we see that, especially here in Ireland, especially in the UK, and I know with you guys in America, it's looking the same way. We have got a situation now in our hands where our population, in a sense, is being overrun by Muslims. Now, it is an invasion. It's just not necessarily invasion like I think a lot of people think in their mind, because whenever you say that term, a lot of people tend to think of warfare. But let me actually say this just very clearly, both for your audience and any of my audience that happens to trickle in as well. It is an invasion, because what's going on here, especially in the West, you have got Muslims coming in from the East. They know that they are not going to conquer through actual physical warfare. So what they do is they come in, they come into the land, they've got zero respect for our customs, zero respect for any of our traditions in the West. You hear them very clearly say they hate the West, they want to see the West die. Now, Islam is talked about as being one of the fastest growing religions in the world, but that is not through conversion. If you look at the conversion statistics of Islam, it's actually one of the quickest dwindling religions in the world. How they are actually growing so quickly is purely through numbers of birth. So your average Muslim man is allowed up to 4 wives in Islam. Therefore, they're going to have big families. And that's pretty much what you're seeing in the West, brother. So you are seeing an invasion, but it's an invasion from the inside out. Especially whenever you've got, multiple immigrant men coming over here, especially in boats. Now, bearing in mind, these boats are meant to be bringing in women and children, but anytime we see them, they're often military-aged males. So It is an invasion, my brother. So yeah, I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it sounds very, very pernicious.
Mm-hmm.
So, but why is it a threat? Why does Islam not mesh well with America, the UK, all that?
Absolutely. So here's the reason why it is a threat. Islam hates the West very clearly. If you read their hadith, which is their, it's not the Quran, the hadiths, the collection of commentaries and sayings of what, so-called Prophet Muhammad's meant to have said. And in it, we read some very, very foul things, and we can get into some of those things a little bit later in the interview if we have time. But one of the things that we do read is that Muslims are not permitted to take Jews or Christians as their friends. We read in their hadith that we are actually their enemy and they are to make warfare on their enemy. So Muslims have no respect for the West. They have no respect for Christianity. They think Christianity's evil. They think Christianity's wicked. So whenever they come into our country, whenever they come into Christian lands, and this is historical as well. This is part of the reason, we eventually had the Crusades, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But what they tend to do is they come in, they will not abide by the law of the land. They only want to abide by their law, which is known as Sharia. So they will not respect Western culture. They will not respect Western customs. They will not respect our laws. They hate it. They think it's evil. They want their own. So whenever you have a religion like Islam, which is backwards in so many ways, the things that they value are almost completely opposite to what we as Christians value. Not just Christians, but also your average everyday person who even, let's take an atheist for example. If you compared an atheist's morals to someone with Islam's views, Islam would also be very, very opposed to those people. So even atheists should view Islam as a threat, because it is. Islam teaches that its adherents, Muslims, are to quite literally make war upon the unbelievers until they are either subjugated, so they're under Muslim control, or they're completely wiped out, or they have to pay a tax known as the jizya in order to live in what now would be considered a Muslim land. So it is an invasion, and it is wicked in a lot of ways. What a lot of people don't realize though, but is it's almost a little bit of the, the whole story, brother, of a frog being added into a pot of water. Now, if you add that frog into a pot of water that's already boiling, the frog's going to jump out. But if you put that frog into cold water and slowly heat it up, the frog sits there until it's boiled to death. That's pretty much what we have going on in our own lands, especially over here in my country, even in the UK here. And because I'm UK and Ireland, I have dual citizenship. We are in a situation now where if you say boo about Islam, you can pretty much expect to have the police on your door, because there's no such thing as freedom of speech anymore over here.
Boy,
Yep.
I wasn't aware that Islam had that second book you were talking about. What did you call it?
So it's not a second book. This is a collection of scholarly books, but Muslims as a whole tend to hold to it. So there's different, I think probably a good idea for me to break this part down a little bit. Whenever you encounter Muslims, you're primarily probably running into a sect called Sunni Islam, okay? So with Muslims, there's two main branches. You've got Sunni and you've got Shia. The Shia are lesser in numbers. Now, there are other smaller subsects than that as well. So if anyone's listening and they've ever heard a Muslim say that, Islam's united, it's not. It really isn't. There's a lot of infighting along with them. Now, however, going back to what your question was, they have a collection of writings called the Hadith. Now, this is things that have got nothing to do historically with Muhammad's life. They're often collated years, sometimes even 100+ years after Muhammad's death. So whenever we talk about the Hadith, we have to recognize that the Hadith are a collection of what is supposed to be sayings or, things that the Prophet Muhammad did that are not in the Quran. The problem is that the Hadith actually come sometimes many, many years after the Prophet's death, hundreds. Whenever you're dealing with Islam, you have to realize it's not as united as what they would like to tell you. So the majority of Muslims will always bring up to Christians and say, you guys are so split, you've got so many, denominations, all this. And they try and make it seem as if Islam is one, that Islam is united. It's not. So for your audience sake, the thing that I would like to point out is whenever you're dealing with Muslims, the likelihood is you're dealing with a sect called Sunni Islam. Now, there's a smaller sect called Shia Islam as well. The Sunnis are the ones that primarily deal with the Hadith. However, the Hadith are pretty much for all of Islam combined. There are smaller sects other than Sunni and Shia, but the two main sects that you will get are the Sunni and Shia. So going back very briefly to what I was saying, the Hadith then are these collections or, so-called collections of sayings from, Muhammad. And whenever you read the Hadith, it's a lot of instruction for them that they don't find in the Quran. So it's actually from the Hadith where you will find phrases like make war upon, the infidel, which would be us, by the way, we're the infidel. And they're told to subdue us, and if we won't convert, we can be killed. Or we can be placed under what is known as paying the jizya. Now, the jizya is a tax that if you lived in a Muslim land, you would have to pay the Muslims for protection. Now, who are you paying protection from? Islam. As you can
Mob.
see, it's not really a protection tax. It's a little bit more of a either you pay this or you face the consequences tax.
They sound like the mob. Wow.
Well, in a lot of ways, they would be. And let me just say this: I think I would prefer to live under the mob.
Yeah. So this hadith, are you familiar with the Muslim teaching that I think exists that they're in their pursuit of conquering the infidel,
Mhm.
they're allowed to lie to us, like that is moral for them.
Yes, so this is actually a concept called taqiyya, which they try to say is something called concealment. They also say that it is only in the case of warfare. So, oh no, don't worry, people in the West, we don't use taqiyya on you because we're not in war. However, that's not actually true, because if you read their hadith, you'll find out that they are actually always in warfare. So, a Muslim is permitted to lie to you, to deceive you, if it furthers the cause of Islam. So, in my role as an apologist, I would deal with this a lot more. If I was to present information to a Muslim and show them somewhere in their hadith, this is what you believe, right? And I can point to it and say, this is what you believe. What that Muslim is then permitted to do is say, oh, no, you misunderstand. That needs to be in the Arabic. The translators have got that incorrect. It needs to be in the Arabic. We don't actually believe that. Meanwhile, they do believe that. So this practice of taqiyya, and again, they're only supposed to use it in warfare. But what the audience needs to remember is they are still in warfare with you. Just because it's not physical battle right now, they still feel that they are in warfare with you. Why? Because their cause, jihad, is to make sure that whatever land they enter becomes an Islamic land that has Sharia. So how they go about that differs. There's some countries they will make physical war with, or countries here like the West where they come into, they conquer it via different means, which is just basically they outnumber the population. So is the average Muslim going to lie to you? Yes, because it's a technique called taqiyya, which they're allowed to practice, and in fact they're encouraged to practice.
The Kia. Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I think of whenever people like, oh no, these ones that I know, they're nice Muslims and everything, and I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're not maybe they're not good Muslims,
Mm.
but
Well, yeah. So this is something that does get brought up a lot because a lot of people will say, "Well, look, I have Muslim neighbors. They're very much acclimatized to the West now. They're good people. They're moral people." So let me just add a little caveat to that. Let's just say, okay, maybe that's the case, right? As you just pointed out, that would mean then that they're not very good Muslims, which actually would be the case because it means they go against the core tenets of their faith. Now, however, most Muslims do love living in Western countries because a lot of them don't actually want to live under Sharia law. They want to enforce you to live under Sharia law, but they don't want to live under Sharia law themselves. Now, whenever you meet your neighbor who may be a Muslim man or, a Muslim woman, and you think they're good people, they don't really call, for jihad, they don't really seem to want to be conquering the land. You need to be very aware that if they were asked tomorrow, would they like, say, for example, the UK to be under Islamic rule, to be a new caliphate, that Muslim is not going to say no. So just because they're not actively calling for it does not mean that they do not want it in their heart. The majority of Muslims want to be in a UK caliphate. They want, so Islam as a people are called the Ummah, which just means, you know, the nation of Islam, like the people of Islam. They want to see whatever nation they live in converted to the Islamic faith. So just because your neighbor beside you seems like and I'm quoting here, you're air quoting, a peaceful Muslim, let's just say that may not be the case.
Right. Okay. Well, so you've mentioned Sharia multiple times, and a lot of people know what Sharia is, or at least we think we kind of know what it is.
Yes.
But give us some examples of what Sharia law is. It all bad?
Yes.
Well, that was easy. Okay.
Yeah. Simple answer to that one. So let me give you a little bit of background of Sharia. So Sharia law is primarily the Islamic jurisprudence. So basically the law of how, you know, everybody is to live, the law of the land. Now, even in the UK here, we are having Sharia courts set up, which means at the moment, if you are a Muslim, you can choose to be tried under Sharia law. Now, the majority of even Muslims don't want to be tried under that because it's not a good law. We look to the law of the Lord and we see that it is good, right? You do not want to be under Sharia law. So we've already got court systems that are being set up under Sharia law. And what Sharia law can do is to have you publicly humiliated, publicly punished. But it's not actually a good and godly law, because unlike the Christian law, where we look and we see that God actually sets up parameters. Like, if you're accusing someone of something, there has to be witnesses. In Islam, in certain situations, a woman especially can be accused of acting inappropriately, and if she was under Sharia law, she could be punished very severely. And that's not just Islamic women, by the way. That's Western women as well. So if we allow in our lands our court systems to change from, now you think about it, Western law is pretty much based on scripture. Whether people know this or not, its laws actually flow from the heart of God's law, because it's good, because Christians actually set up courts. But if we allow in the West our systems to be changed to where we're allowed Sharia courts, and this is the other guise of it, brother, is these Sharia courts are brought in and we're told, oh, no, don't you worry about it. It's only for Muslims. It's only for Muslims until they become the majority of the population. Then it's not only for Muslims, because then you're not even going to be given the option to be tried by your Western court, by your Christian court. You're going to be tried under Sharia law. Now, I could go into multiple aspects of what Sharia teaches. All I'm going to tell you is you do not want to be under Sharia law. It is not a just law.
Yeah. Something I was learning about Sharia just the other day. Apparently, there was a bill in the Texas legislature where I'm at. I think it was last year. There's a couple Muslim representatives in our legislature right now, and they were wanting imams. Is that what they call their?
Yep.
Okay.
Imams.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. A Muslim pastors, basically Muslim priests, to be able to officiate weddings. Now it got shot down, but I was learning a little bit about their marriage law. They can do temporary marriages for pleasure. Is that one of those?
Yes. So this is a practice. Now, even some very famous UK Muslims over here got caught practicing this. So this goes back to the whole Sunni versus Shia issue. This practice is a practice called muta, and it's a muta marriage. Basically, what it would be the equivalent to, and for anybody that thinks that I'm making this up, you can go away and research this. It's a very despicable practice. So essentially what a muta marriage is, say I am married to my wife and I go away traveling and I'm away for a week, and I'll try and keep things a little bit PG here, brother, unless you don't mind me being a little bit
No,
more.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, so say I am away for a week and I am feeling lonely. I miss my wife in a physical manner. I can go out and propose, and I don't mean with a ring propose, I mean propose as in like make a proposition to a woman, basically that I will marry her for, say, the remainder, say I'm there for 3 more days, so I can marry her for 3 days. We can then have married couple time for those 3 days, and she will receive either a cash benefit or some other benefit that I can give her, and then I will divorce her after the 3rd day and put her away. So basically, it's a form of marital prostitution. No, it's not actually marriage. We're aware of that. But it's an extremely despicable practice. So the reason why I brought up the Sunni Shia thing is Sunni Muslims will say, no, that's a Shia practice. We don't practice that. We put that away. But even here in the UK, 2 of the more famous Muslims who are Sunni Muslims have been caught doing this practice, and it's became very public. That is a guy called Ali Dawah and Muhammad Hijab. So I don't know if you're familiar with those guys, or maybe any of your audience are, but they have recently been shamed because it's been brought out into the open that they did this practice with Muslim women and then tried to put them away quietly and shut them up. And whenever you see how they tried to shut these women up, there was a lot of physical threat involved.
Wow. Yeah. When I read temporary marriage, I did not think that temporary. Wow.
Oh, well, you see, this is what I think the world should be made aware to. Islam uses words to make things sound less bad. So if you and I were to name that practice, brother, we would call that prostitution. You're paying for a prostitute. So what's a Muslim going to call? Oh, it's a marriage. It's just a temporary marriage. Because that makes it sound less bad, doesn't it? But no, what they're essentially doing, and this is very common, Christianity elevates women. Islam degrades women.
As if that wasn't obvious enough from the burqas and stuff.
Oh,
crazy.
Absolutely, yeah. And like one of the things, you'll find very common is you'll find it very rare to actually find a Muslim woman that will speak to you as a Western man. That's primarily because she will fear being caught speaking to you in public anyway, because like I said earlier about Sharia law, an accusation can be made against that woman and she can then be punished even for speaking to you. So for example, Muslim women will not so it's a custom here in the West that even among men and women, like if I was to walk into a room and you were there with your wife, I would check your hand and would check your wife's hand, okay? That's forbidden in Islam. That woman will refuse to shake your hand. So wow. Yeah, so that's what I mean by like they reject Western tradition, they reject Western culture and custom. So going back briefly to what I was saying, because I don't want to eat too much into this, but that woman will refuse to speak to you. But this just say, for example, you did get that woman to speak to you, and you ask her, how do you feel about wearing the hijab or the niqab? She will tell you, oh, it's good. I do it by choice. She doesn't do it by choice. She'll tell you that she does it by choice. Because if she did it by choice, she would also do it when she's at home. But she doesn't do it while she's at home because it's not freeing. But she's free to be herself, as in like in her normal clothes around her family. Now, she won't do it out in public because she says, oh, it's by her choice. She doesn't want the male gaze on her. But that's not actually the case. It's the males in her life that don't want any gaze upon her. So what they'll do is, rather than have her dress modestly, they'll throw this over her. So she's completely covered head to toe. Yep.
It's amazing how kind of opposite that is, but not really opposite. I don't know. Between Muslims and leftists. Mm-hmm. Like you have just total slutty clothing in the West right now.
Yes.
I don't know, it's the evil of extremes.
Absolutely, because this is something, again, that Muslims will try and point to as if, this is what I say, but they're very clever in how they try to use words. So they'll frame the West as being, oh, look at the West, their women are harlots, their women do this, their women do that. Now, can you look at the West and say, yes, in a lot of ways, things have gone very south? There are women nowadays that would feel no shame walking up and down the street in a bikini. That's wrong. Even as Christians, we would say that's wrong. Our women should be dressing modestly. But modesty does not equal being covered head to toe in a black garment where you basically just have a front eyelid slot to look out of. So pretty much just what you said, brother. There's that polar extreme of they will look at the West and despise it. But in their despising of it, they will subjugate their own women to wear these, and I even hate calling it clothing, but this just say for argument's sake clothing. They will subjugate their women to be in that, no matter the heat, no matter the weather. That woman is to wear that hijab or niqab.
Oh yeah, the heat. I can't
Yep.
imagine.
No,
Crazy.
no, definitely not.
And I thought about how it's the same. It's the lack of respect
Mm-hmm.
for women on both sides.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So we're getting along in time, but I do want to talk a little bit more about almost the specifics about what's going on in the UK, because I don't think people know how bad it's getting.
Yeah.
You've already, in saying that they're setting up Sharia courts, you're already telling me
Yes.
more than I knew about how bad it's getting. Tell us about it.
Yep. Sorry, pardon me. Had the cough there. Yeah, so we already have Sharia courts here in the UK and even in Ireland. So that's one part of it. But let me just tell you something, brother, and let me tell your audience this as well, obviously. And there's far more than this, by the way, but out of 7 of our major cities, even in England, 7 of those are now, 7 of those big cities now have Muslim mayors, right? Our chief of police in the UK, I would say maybe about 4 to 5 months ago, was pictured sitting at a desk surrounded by Muslim counsellors. And I don't say this lightly, but he looked dejected. And he looked like, if you were to capture it and say conquered, it wouldn't even be a joke. He looked completely dejected. He looked conquered. And the thing is, over here now, brother, we are in a situation, like as I say, I wouldn't be too surprised if I even got a knock on my door from this podcast, but that's neither here nor there. I don't really care too much about that. I'm not going to shy away about speaking about it. But even over here in the UK, you're now at a stage where Islam is becoming a protected religion. You cannot say boo about Islam, even if it is their own teaching, even if they admit to it. So, for example, Muslims won't shy away from the fact that their so-called prophet married a 6-year-old girl and then consummated the marriage with her at 9 years old. However, if I, as a Christian, am to point that fact out, I can face jail time for pointing that fact out. We have got Muslim call to prayers. Now, I'm not too sure if you know what the call to prayer is, but it's this loud call to prayer that is blasted out every morning at ridiculous o'clock. So we're talking wee small hours in the morning. That has been blasted out every morning of them singing a portion of the Quran, calling the people to come for prayer, to wake up and pray to their so-called God, Allah. Now, that breaks all noise barriers. This is going off multiple times a day. But yet I, as a Christian, cannot stand silently on the street praying. I can be arrested now for praying, or even appearing to be praying. But yet, Muslims, they can blast a call to prayer throughout the day and night. Muslims can demand that our supermarkets over here produce only halal meat. We are living in a culture now that is, I don't want to say conquered yet, because there is pushback. There is good pushback against it. People are finally waking up, which is good. However, going back to my earlier analogy, brother, especially over here, we are the frog in the pot where the water is now starting to get very, very hot. So if we don't start reversing things, the UK is in for a terrible couple of years, because some of the projections by 2050, the UK will be primarily Muslim. I don't mean Muslim as in like they're actually good Muslims and they adhere to Islam, but just population wise, they will actually outnumber the national people of the UK. That's how ridiculous it's getting.
I believe it. Do you know what the percentage is right now of the UK population?
Not off the top of my head, brother. No, I wish I would have took some notes down on that. However, it's not good. I will say that, because by 2050, as they say, the population will have shifted dramatically in favor of the Muslims. 2050 may sound like a long time off for people, right? And in one sense it is, but also 25 years is nothing in the course of history. Even by the time we get towards 2030, things will be shifting. If there's no change, and if we don't, as a Christian people, if we don't wake up and realize our Christian heritage, we are going to lose our culture. culture, we're going to lose our country. Because this is going back to the earlier beginning of this episode, brother. It is an invasion. It's just not an invasion in the way people think about, where they're coming and conquering us, with swords and whatever else. They're doing it slowly. They're doing it politically. They're, not to be vulgar, they're outbreeding us. So they're defeating us by numbers.
Yeah, people really don't realize how pernicious it is. That's why I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about it.
Yeah.
And we're not done yet, but you mentioned the call to prayer. We've got that happening in at least one of our cities here in the United States, up in Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan. People look that up. It's crazy. Is that happening you said in a majority of the cities in the UK right now?
Oh, absolutely. Now, where I live, so I live, just a little bit of context, and I don't want to take up too much time. I am British and I am Irish. I have dual citizenship. So where I live in Northern Ireland, I live under UK rule, but I can also operate under Irish rule as well. Now, the reason I point that out is over here at the moment, our situation is not quite as bad as mainland UK. So Scotland, England and Wales, they have it rough. However, Northern Ireland needs to keep its eyes on what's happening over there, because if we don't wake up, we're in the same trouble. But yes, in England especially, you've got call to prayer pretty much throughout the land. You've got Muslims in positions of political power, whether that's being mayors or councillors, whatever you have it. They're entering into places of power because they freely tell you. You can see it in their mosques. They record it just like we record sermons. They say they will conquer us by taking over politics. That's why, if you guys have that at the moment, so you mentioned Dearborn. Folks, if you live in Dearborn, you need to vote against this nonsense. You need to stop it in its tracks. Because if you don't, you're going to have a huge fight in your hand.
Yeah, there was a guy, it's so far gone so far in Dearborn. There was a guy, I don't know if you saw, at their city council meeting, there was a Christian dude saying, hey, I don't think we should name this street after a terrorist from the Middle East.
Yep.
And the mayor was like, as the mayor, I'm saying you are not welcome here. You are not welcome here. The day you leave is the day I'm going to throw a parade celebrating you leaving. And it's just, and maybe you can speak to this. He, don't know if it was in that same meeting, but maybe he came back and saying, like, I love you, I'm praying for you. I think he said I forgive you. I don't remember. Don't remember the exact details, but should it have been, I'm going to sue you, that was unconstitutional. You can't do that. How should we respond in the West to this invasion?
Yep. Well, what you need to do first of all is you need to wake up. And I know that sounds simple, but it's true. You need to look around and realize I am the frog in the pot. I think I'm not going to speak to America just yet, because I don't think you guys are in as bad of a situation as we are. But if you don't wake up, you're going to be in a very similar situation as we are. However, over here in the UK and Ireland, we are in the pot to the point where the water is starting to bubble. And we have got a lot of patriots now that are starting to wake up and go, oh my goodness, how did we get here? But how we got here is by being lazy. We shunned things like politics. We didn't care who we voted for, because that's the thing. You can vote on particular issues, that's great, that's good. But what you should be doing is you should be encouraging Christian men to enter politics. Christian men that want to uphold the law of the land, which is based upon God's law. So you should want and you should be active in getting Christian men into politics. You should want those people being in positions of power where they can uphold the law of the land and say, no, this is good, this is based on God's law, this is what we want for our people, what we want for our land. So that's one way. The other way is to educate yourself. There is a lot of great material out there, and if any of your audience are interested, go check out channels like David Wood, where he teams up with guys like Inspiring Philosophy, Apostate Prophet. Now, Apostate Prophet's a guy called Ridvan. He is an ex-Muslim who then became an atheist for years, who has now become a Christian. Go and listen to what he tells you about his own former religion. Here's a dude who is going to tell you what it is that Islam truly teaches behind the scenes. Because remember, Muslims will lie to you. They're encouraged to lie to you if it profits Islam. So go do your study. Make sure you get good Christian men into politics. And here's the third thing. Do not be ashamed of your own country. Do not be ashamed of your own culture. Stand up proudly for it. Sing it from the top of the roofs, and make sure that whenever people come into your land illegally or other means, that they realize that they are a sojourner in your land and that you're not a sojourner in their land.
Good stuff. Well, excellent. Well, Layman, we're going to pray for you. Hope you don't
Yes.
get arrested.
Well, I hope that myself, brother, but at the same time, I live in a country where, as I say, we even had a young girl recently, and I'll just say this briefly. We even had a young girl recently who was arrested for even looking at a tweet online. Now, not engaging with the tweet, just reading it. So that's the type of culture I'm currently living in. But ultimately, brother, the Lord's will be done. I'm not going to be silent on it, and I appreciate the chance to come on and share today with you and your audience.
Amen. Okay, well, where can people find you, support you? You got lots of projects coming up.
I do indeed, yes. So if you are on X, which I'm sure a lot of your audience, brother, is probably coming from as well, you can find me just at, I believe my handle is backwards on X, so I think it's the Apologist Layman. So you can find me on there. But if you just type in the Layman Apologist, you'll find me. You can also find me on YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and Substack. I write a lot of articles over at Substack, so you can catch me over there.
Sounds good. Okay, well, really appreciate you coming in and shedding some light on that.
Yeah, brother, anytime. And if you ever want to have a follow-up episode where we get into a few more details, I'm down for it.
Yeah, this went on. I think this is my longest so far interview, and we didn't finish. We didn't get everything.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you later. Have a great day.
Bye.